Hello and welcome. So today I want to take a look at a question many asked. Are player characters always level 100, or is Ainz something special for reaching this level? This question had risen because apparently some players who made it into the new world had a lower level than 100. For example, the two players of the 13 heroes were initially considered extremely weak by the standards of both worlds, and the only really impressive thing about them was their growth. Ainz Ooal Gown, one of the 13 heroes herself, stated that the two were initially the weakest of the group, but at the end of the journey, the leader surpassed every other member of the heroes, including her and Regret, which indicates level gain. But Ainz Ooal Gown also got a few things wrong. For example, she believed that players are a special race in the new world, when in truth, they are just random humans who were being isekai'd. And being an isekai'd human is not exactly a rare thing these days. So while I consider Ainz Ooal Gown to be a reliable source in general, I still wouldn't take everything she says as the absolute truth. But still, this raises the initial question: are all players level 100? Or is being level 100 something special? And this is where the theorizing begins. Being max leveled in any MMORPG, where leveling up means just grinding, isn't complicated or an achievement. Additionally, it was stated that the vast majority of levels were easy to obtain, and that most players used death and the subsequent level loss as a convenient way to redistribute their skill points. So being level 100 in Yggdrasil online seems to be nothing special. And the truly decisive factors for powerful players are not level, since everybody would be maxed out at some point, but A, the build, aka which stats and skills do you choose. B, the equipment. For example, it was common for normal level 100 players to lack access to even one divine class item, and Schaltir, the strongest floor guardian, had only her lance. And in contrast to this, Ainz is clad head to toe in divine tier items. Continuing with C, knowledge about the world and your enemies, since Yggdrasil relied entirely on player-driven discovery and also offered a deep surveillance and counter-surveillance system. And last but not least, D, experience and expertise. For example, you need to time your spells perfectly for the full effect. This was something only the top 5% of all players could do, and Ainz belonged to this group. Still, even with all of these advantages, Ainz considered himself to be only above average in terms of PvP battle strength, simply because instead of min-maxing his character for battle, he created a role-play build. Furthermore, in the last years of Yggdrasil, Ainz just logged in to farm for upkeep, so that the guild would be still there in case his friends are coming back. And before that, Ulbert Elaine Oddle admired and even tried to recreate the roleplay build of Ainz, which is likely also the reason why this archdemon admires Ainz so much. And all of this would indicate that Ainz was level 100 at least for several years. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the other theory doesn't hold any merit. Quite the contrary. If the level cap had risen over time from, let's say, 40 to 100, and if during the entire 12 years where Yggdrasil was online, people were indeed isekai'd, it would for example explain why the two leaders of the 13 heroes were so weak. Or, and this is likely the most important hint, why the level cap for most beings in the new world is so low. Being level 40 is the maximum level most humans could acquire, and human builds were more or less the default race for most players. So if in the early days level 40 was indeed the max level, it would explain why humans, goblins, lizardmen and many other species are so weak by Nezarec standards, who were transported at the very end of Yggdrasil. Also, this would explain why Ainz can't create undead stronger than level 40 with a normal human or lizardman body. Anything beyond level 40 is simply incompatible with them, since they might be from an earlier version. So trying to use a human or a lizardman body as a vessel for a strong undead, or trying to turn their skin into a scroll able to hold a 10-tier spell, is like expecting an old flip phone to run Skyrim. So over the span of 12 years, and numerous expansions and updates. Many more and much stronger races such as dragonoids were introduced, and while the level of the original races such as humans were raised accordingly in Yggdrasil, this change didn't manifest in the new world, since there's no permanent connection to it. It likely seems that the time frame for this is one moment every 100 years. So while humans in the new world might have initially been able to survive and prosper in it, with each expansion and each rise in level cap, new powerful beings would appear which by default were much stronger than the average human, and so mankind was slowly driven to extinction until 6 players, known as the 6 great gods, were transported into this new world. But there are also a few contrapoints to this theory. The dragons of old were way stronger than pretty much anything in the new world today, so if the 8 kings who fought an apocalyptic war were just level 40 to let's say 80, they still might have been a bit too low level-wise, even with their guild and their powerful NPCs. I mean, we know how strong Ainz's pet dragons are, and they are by no means comparable to a true dragonlord, much less to the dragonlords of old. Also, Platinum Dragonlord was able to at least battle Shaltir and retreat successfully while just fighting in his armor. Furthermore, some of the surviving Dragonlords could fight and win against floor guardians of Nazarick, who are confirmed level 100 entities. Also, the 6 great gods and quite possible the 8 great kings all had world items, which are game-breaking equipment, and because of their rarity most guilds would have hunted any underleveled players with a world-class item. So therefore we know that the 6 players of the Theocracy were very likely maxed out level-wise. Furthermore, the developers who were apparently quite involved with their player base would have likely noticed that world items disappeared, only to later find human husks, brain-dead and soulless, who were still staring into their dive gear. Additionally, we know a bit about a huge expansion, the Fall of Valkyria. In the first book, Ainz pulled out 2 Yggdrasilian gold coins, and while the design was different, their monetary value remained the same. So we know for a fact that the value of the currency hasn't changed, and considering that microtransactions were a thing, the already existing player base might have hated the idea of a higher level cap, since their items and their gear they have bought with real money would lose quite a bit of value in-game, since it was optimized for let's say a level 40 build and not a level 100 one. I mean the adding of the Mask of Envy for everyone who was logged in for over 2 hours on Christmas caused already a huge outrage, because it indicates that the person in possession of this mask had nothing better to do than be online all day on Christmas Eve. So given this outcry over a mere gift, the outrage over a devaluation of essentially all top tier items paid by real money would be indeed extreme. Additionally, if everybody was transported on the last day, some of the players still logged in might just have been fooling around, since, well, it was the last day and their characters, their items and everything else will be gone at midnight anyway. So there was no reason to not mess around with their build, to change race or gender, or fight each other until both of you are level 1, which might be precisely the thing the 2 players of the 13 heroes had done. And on the flip side, maybe a few human players decided to turn into heteromorphs and make some crazy builds, just because it was the last day. This would explain the evil deities. So considering all of this, I'm going full on Ainz and A, assume that every other player character, until given indication for the contrary, is level 100. And B, that the Happy Farm is just a lovely little pet project of Demiurge. Last but not least, I personally don't like the idea that every other player besides Ainz was too stupid or just unable to reach max level in an MMORPG where power leveling tools existed and where losing levels was the primary way of rebuilding your character, especially when it comes to the 6 great gods who are confirmed to have a world-class item. Again, that doesn't mean that there were no players below level 100 in the new world, but being level 100 shouldn't be held as something special. And the very idea that Momonga was this OP being isn't true when seen in the context of Yggdrasil. He was a role-playing build and not a fighter, and I believe ignoring this takes a bit of his character. His experience and knowledge is what makes him truly dangerous, even to beings that have better stats and better equipment. And the fight against Shaltir shows this. Not only is she stronger than Ainz. Ainz didn't brought his divine class items with him, and despite Ainz specializing into it to some degree, he couldn't summon other undead such as Death Knights or Soul Eaters to aid him in this battle, since Shaltir would use these weak undead to heal herself, and Ainz's greater summons would cost him experience. Please keep in mind that this duel took place way before Splat, so Avarice and Generosity, the world item Mare guards, hadn't had any time to collect XP, and on top of all of this, just to strengthen his resolve, he even unequipped his revival ring. But still, despite all of these disadvantages, he still managed to corner Shaltir. He baited her into using all of her skills. He had taken out her recovery items, summons, and Einherjar, and by the time Ainz used Perfect Warrior, Shaltir had run out of mana as well, which then severely limited her options when countering the OP gear Ainz borrowed from his friends. The only thing that would have indeed killed him, if Aura hadn't intervened, was the short amount of pity Ainz had for Shaltir, a detail Albedo might be very interested in, since it would indicate that Ainz might die in battle due to his compassion for the other NPCs. Anyway, my point is, what makes Ainz so truly dangerous is his knowledge about Yggdrasil, combined with the modest outlook and the insight that he still needs to learn and improve. Combine this attitude with what was likely the most powerful guild base in Yggdrasil, and you got a truly OP Overlord instead of a generic bad guy with superpowers. But again, this is just my personal take on it. And since there's no definitive answer yet, both theories could be true, at least in part. And maybe there's even a third, fourth or fifth option. So, what do you believe? Let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in additional content, be sure to check out my comedy channel. And with all of that said, have a nice day, over and out.